Okay, next subject. So when an infotainment program starts up, after the requisite observational research and all of that, the team has to decide what features to put in the system. Right? The engineers have a mountain of possibilities in front of them. Right? They go to every supplier, they go to every tech supplier. They know too much. They'll ask marketing, what does the customer want? And as I mentioned before, nobody's got a real good crystal ball on this. The question's not what do customers want, it's what are customers going to want 4 to 6 years from now in their car with infotainment. Nobody knows that, right? You get answers back like, well, they want Bluetooth connection or apps. Do you have any apps? Not really actionable input necessarily. So, the poor electrical team, they don't know what to do. What if they're wrong? What if they don't put in the thing that becomes the big thing that everybody uses? So you know what they do? It all goes in. And, there's a little bit of that going on here today too, where there are a lot of different things in these vehicles. And I think that if you really have a moment of honesty with yourself, you say, how much of this is an average person really going to use, right? I have known customers that have been in cars for 6 months before they pointed out, how do you like your heads-up display? My what? Out of adjustment, didn't know it was there. So, I'm going to take this to our next rule, and this one is by far the most obvious, and also, frankly, the most difficult, right? Simple seems easy, but it's not. Simple is actually the hardest one on this list to achieve. But the good news is, for those of you who are really into metrics, simple you can measure, right? Are there 6 choices or are there 30? Did it take 5 steps or 15 steps to do a task? Or did the task happen automatically, right? And this is really important for us. The automotive standard for UI is the most difficult in any industry, right? By far the most expensive, complex, dangerous product that somebody uses on a daily basis is what we're designing for, all right? You get a little training when you're 15, and then after that, anybody can throw you the keys, and you go. No seminar, no Genius Bar, you can't phone a friend. And if you open the owner's manual, that really is a failure on you, the customer's part, and our collective part, right? Nobody does that. So, we actually have developed our own testing system that generates data for us when designing a new system, right? We have a database of current vehicles and the phone projection systems to make comparisons to, but the real value is not judging at the end, but to help make decisions along the way and trade-offs to get too simple, which is hard to do. All right, NHTSA organizes interactions and distractions into these 3 categories. So that seemed like a really logical place for us to start. Visual is not just eyes off the road time, but how much is really staring back at you at any given time when you're trying to accomplish a task. Manual is hands off the wheel time and reach curves. Cognitive is how much thought goes in the task, right? Are you relying on muscle memory? Or do you have to take your mind off the road when you're doing something? And each category has measurable data, which is great, and this is basically how we do our testing. The last one, cognitive, really comes down to a number of steps per task, right? And what's great about this is, NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, has guidelines. They're based on, cars from the 50s with, 2 knobs and some favorites in between. But still, the basics are there. You can only look away from the road for 2 seconds at a time, 6 times, right? Pretty simple rule. Even I can remember that. I went to art school. And we can do a pass-fail on tasks. And it's amazing how many tasks, after owning the car for a while, or at least in our tests where, we try it maybe 5 times in a row, we can't get there. And so it's interesting. And so we have obviously we have a pass-fail for that as well. here's the basic tasks that we measure, right? Which tasks are the most common? I don't know. You know, true data doesn't exist. We've looked, but that's okay. As is customary for designers, when we don't have actual data, we make up our own. It's the 33% rule, right? Love it. Okay, so here's an example of, let's say, audio tasks, right? Choosing a favorite. Awesome. Favorites are the best, right? They've been in cars since the very beginning. I now see favorites, easy access to your favorites, kind of creeping into personal electronics. That's great. A little late, but that was something where we were ahead of them, which is fantastic. Some brands hide favorites. Some brands make it so that you can only look at some favorites depending on what screen you're on. We penalize them for that. So we didn't spend a lot of time on CD players and things like that, because hopefully that's not going to be used that much. We also look at whether or not physical controls, knobs, or buttons allow for shortcuts so you don't have to spend too much time with the screen. So here's a very light look at what is a lot of data. And we've used a format that I think anybody at a big company is very familiar with. Green means you're the best or among the best. Yellow means and red is we may have a problem here. And you can see on some of these things, well, obviously CarPlay and EduData don't necessarily rely on physical buttons or physical button size and font, but it is important. And we can see that there are some trade-offs being made here, right? Like FCA has fewer physical buttons. It allowed them to have bigger buttons with bigger font type. That's awesome. It also shows, though, when you get to, we don't measure screen size because, you know, they've got a bigger screen than, let's say, everyone but BMW on the list here. But it's screen density. I mean, the good news is it's a bigger screen. The bad news is it got packed with more stuff. And maybe it's really important that I tag a song, or maybe nobody uses that, or don't use it that much. But there are a lot of things staring back at you that you don't always need. So we kind of, we penalize them for that. That's the, you know, we see that a lot where companies go to larger and larger screens, and the temptation to now have everything in there, place it all on the screen is very high. Or saying, you know what, we're gonna have a minimum size for a button or a font, and you have a ton of that button and font all staring back at you without a hierarchy. That can be really difficult to use while you're driving. Okay, next one. The cognitive results, how many steps does it take to do some of these tasks? You know, I won't go through all the tasks or the exact numbers here, but I will say that, you know, when it comes to audio, we do pretty well as an industry. You know, we're absolutely on par with the phone projection guys, which is great. I mean, those are some of the hardest ones to test against. When we get into navigation and voice rec, not so much. I think a lot of cars now have a Siri pass-through as opposed to their own voice rec, and I would imagine most customers probably just use the Siri pass-through. Okay. We can also see where new technology can earn its way in, maybe reducing some of these steps, right? Pairing a phone is still a bit of a process, right? On most of these vehicles, I bet it probably is something that's locked out and you have to do while you're parked, which is logical. That's fine. It makes sense. Switching Bluetooth sources on a lot of these vehicles is not locked out, but gets dubiously close to NHTSA's guidelines and cutoff of how much distraction you should be doing. And, you know, given the way people really listen to music, you know, let's say people younger than me, they do like to share their music and they do like to guest DJ. So we tap a phone to pay. We tap a phone to pair to speakers and headphones. I mean, you can tap your phone to pair to a printer. I mean, a printer. Printers are ahead of us. You know, we all hate printers, don't we? So, is near-field communication worth putting in the car? Some OEMs say yes, some say no, but it does reduce those steps to one. And I mean, if you think about it, if you were really considering how people would use this in the car, like I said, having a guest DJ, maybe you put the tap to pair in the center console so that, you know, anybody in the car can be guest DJ with, you know, obviously an accept or a no from the driver, because there's also those kind of people.